So welcome everyone and good evening. Thank you for joining us for this much anticipated NAMPS webinar. We will begin with a land acknowledgement. The North American Native Plant Society acknowledges the territories, both past and present, of the First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and Indigenous peoples throughout Turtle Island. We are grateful to be guests on this beautiful land. We uphold and abide by the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous peoples and respect Indigenous knowledge, cultures, and traditional practices, and how they contribute to sustainable and equitable development and proper management of the environment. We strive to preserve, protect, and cultivate and promote the importance of these teachings and hope the work we do supports this. I'd like to further acknowledge that many of us are joining tonight from the Greater Toronto Area in Ontario, Canada, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. My name is Kimberly Bell, and I'm a member of the NAMPS board, and I'd like to introduce my team tonight. So behind the scenes, we have Ali Hayes. Hallie, I'm not sure if you're able to turn your camera on and just wave. Behind the scenes, we have Ali Hayes, who is the communications coordinator for NAMPS. Ali's early experiences camping and in the garden fostered her love for growing things and a sense of wonder in wild spaces. She obtained a master's degree in environmental studies from York University with a focus in environmental justice and began to deepen her appreciation of native plants as a volunteer ranger with the David Suzuki Foundation's Homegrown National Park project, now the Butterfly Way project. And my co-host tonight is Fatima Minhas. Fatima is a researcher and student at York University, specializing in environmental studies with a focus on plant conservation and its violent colonial history. She studies rare and endemic plants in the Western Himalayas, examining how British plant explorers documented species while erasing the indigenous peoples who long stewarded them. Her work challenges the failures of Western conservation models, arguing that true protection of these fragile ecosystems comes from centering indigenous knowledge and sovereignty. I would like to remind everyone that there will be an opportunity to ask Joey Santore questions after he presents his favorite plants. We ask that you please use the raise hand feature of your Zoom controls, and we will do our best to call on questions in the order that they are received. And now I would like to hand the stage over to Fatima.
Hi, everyone. I saw a lot of people in Ontario. We're having really teasing weather. We all want to go out and garden, but the season's not over. Anyway, I wanted to introduce Joey. So I'm going to start now. Joey Santoro is a self-taught botanist, naturalist, and the creator of Crime Pays but Botany Doesn't, a YouTube channel that blends deep ecological knowledge with unfiltered humor and a streetwise working class attitude. Originally from Chicago, he did not take a traditional path into botany. He started as a freight train conductor, but after a chance encounter with California's diverse plant life, became obsessed with understanding the evolutionary history of landscapes and the plants that inhabit them. Today, he travels across North America and beyond, documenting some of the harshest and most overlooked ecosystems. His focus includes high elevation deserts, ancient volcanic landscapes, and serpentine barrens, where he brings attention to rare and unusual plant species. What sets Joey apart is not just his knowledge of botany, geology, and ecology, but also his no-nonsense approach. His videos are a mix of scientific deep dives, impassioned rants against habitat destruction, and comedic critiques of bureaucracy and human ignorance. With a signature Chicago accent, like someone said in the beginning, and rapid fire delivery, he makes botany feel alive and engaging. Through Crime Pays but Botany Doesn't, Joey is breaking down barriers to science and making botany accessible to anyone. He welcomes people from all backgrounds, whether or not they have a formal education in the subject. Rather than focusing on just the aesthetics of plants, he encourages viewers to appreciate the intricate relationships between geology, fungi, climate, and evolution. Whether he is wading through a desert wash, marveling at a rare conifer, or passionately discussing the damage caused by invasive species, Joey Santoro proves that botany is not just for academics. It is for anyone who is willing to pay attention. And introducing Joey.
Okay, here we go.
Hey, there you go.
How's everybody doing, you tender Canadians? Is everybody there in Canada mostly? I think so. Um, Let me see. How do I do it? I can't do a share screen. Does that need to be enabled or something?
Oh,
Let's see. Here we go. Screen share. Okay. Let's go to Google Chrome. Can everybody hear me all right?
yeah, you're good, Joey.
Okay. All right. Here we go. So I'm just going to go over some plants today using iNaturalist. Hopefully, everybody uses iNaturalist or is familiar with it. It's a phenomenal tool. I use it mostly for myself, just so I can keep track of everything that I've seen. And so I was asked to highlight some of my favorite plants on the East Coast, and so that's what I'm going to do. The eastern half of North America. If you look at um, where I've observed things, let's get rid of this custom boundary. Obviously, I've been all over the world. I haven't hit the Asian continent too much, but I like exploring uh, for lineages. I like knowing a genus or a family and becoming familiar with it, and then seeing where those species, those taxa in that genus or family have been distributed throughout the world and how they've adapted and been selected for different places. The region sculpts it, the region literally creates the plant. Okay, like there's a plant we call living rock cactus in West Texas. It wouldn't look like a living rock if it didn't evolve in these harsh limestone deserts surrounded by white limestone rock. If it was a pink volcanic rock or something else, it would look completely different. So the habitat quite literally sculpts the form and the phytochemistry and many other traits about the plants that we're interested in. And so plants are tied to place, right? They're irrevocably tied to place. This is part of why it's so ridiculous to live in a place like Florida and plant, landscape with plants that are, evolved 6,000 miles away, or to live in Ohio, for instance, and landscape with plants that evolved in Asia with a completely different set of fungi and pollinators, etc. So anyway, let's focus on, you can see I got a little grid drawn around the eastern US, the upper peninsula of Michigan. That's further north than you guys are. And we're going to look at, I was asked to pick 5 species. I'm probably going to do a lot more than that. Someone's going to have to check me for time because I'm a mouthy little dago and I tend to go overboard. So just let me know when the time runs out. So here, if I go to the grid section on iNaturalist, I've drawn a polygon on the map around the region. I'll go to grid and then I can go up here to, species or genus or family or whatever and select the different species that I had picked out. So I had first up one of my favorite genera, the genus Silphium, which is in the composite family, the sunflower family. I don't know. You guys get Silphium terebinthinaceum, aka prairie dock, up in this guy up in. You guys can see the screen, right? This is the screen share is coming through. Okay. Yeah.
Yep, we
Okay.
can see it, Joey.
Okay. Great. So Silphium terebinthinaceum. This is probably one of my favorite plants. I don't know if you guys get it up in Toronto. I would imagine you do. It's very cold hardy. The plant can live for a century, probably longer than that. I don't think it's ever been documented. Obviously, it doesn't produce growth rings. It's not a tree. Um, and the roots stay alive like all of these wonderful prairie plants. Like in the background here, like this just looks like a green blur, but it's probably one of the richest sites in Illinois. This was in Illinois. There's literally 40 or 50 species. Some have already flowered, some have not flowered. Some of these prairies are incredibly diverse and they're really thick and dense and an almost psychedelic place to be at sunrise on a warm summer evening. I haven't been to Ontario since I was like, I don't know, 22. I rode freight trains through there, stopped in Toronto for a little bit, and then I went through Cape Riol. I remember picking wild blueberries in the train yard. So I was not into plants yet, but I don't remember. I would imagine there's prairies around there. And I would imagine Silphium terebinthinaceum grows there as well. So you can see it's got these 3 foot long leaves. I've grown this species from seed before. When you grow them, they start out, looking, it's a very modest plant. It's very small, but it quickly, if given full sun and ample moisture, it quickly gets leaves that can be upwards of 3 feet long and roots that can go upwards of 50 or 60 feet into the soil. And that's kind of the thing with all these prairie plants. I mean, you see this and you think there's not much plant matter there, but then you hear all the prairies and grasslands actually sequester a lot of carbon, more so than forests in many cases. And you think, how is that possible? It's all in the roots. The roots of these things go down, of every plant here goes down from 12 to 30 feet in some cases into the soil. And as those plants die, those roots stay buried and they're basically building soil. That's part of what condemned them when European settlers came, is that the soil was so good because it had been so many thousands of years of those plants growing and dying and growing and dying that they destroyed everything for farmland. They destroyed almost everything. It's that kind of take everything mentality of modern society that we still have. Um, anyway, so that's the genus Silphium, and you can see uh, really only 4 species. I thought I had more than this. I think there's like 12 or 14 species in the genus. They're all over the U.S., the eastern U.S. mostly. You got Integrifolium, terebinthinaceum. Oh yeah, I forgot I drew a polygon. Asteriscus, this was in Pennsylvania. There's a really cool Texas endemic that's got bright white flowers because, as most people probably know, this isn't what you're looking at. Like all members of Asteraceae, is not a single flower. There's 30 individual flowers there. You've got these ligules, the quote unquote rays, and then there's the actual flower. One of these little structures with that long style coming up. That's the female part, the pistillate part of the flower, and then there are the anthers where they release pollen in that little black tube, inward facing. Really unique structure. But all the species of Silphium, this is one of the things I love about uh, iNaturalist. You can go here, click on the taxon page, go to taxonomy, and go to the genus Silphium. Click on that. Oh wow, it's almost 20 species. You can see every taxonomic level under genus, all the different species, each one a variation on a theme, each one a different form that's been adapted to a different kind of environment. This one, albiflorum, is from very harsh, dry times limestone deserts in Texas that kind of mark a transition zone between the mesic eastern half of the U.S. to the much more arid western half of the United States, which is runs right through Texas, that 100th meridian. So variations on a theme. So that's definitely one of my favorite plants. Silphium terebinthinaceum, really easy to grow from seed. It's a great plant to put in a garden. They get massive, they build massive root systems. And again, those leaves can be upwards of 3 feet tall. And that inflorescence, of course, let me see. That inflorescence, of course, all those flowers, that's about 10 feet tall right there in that photo, because they've got to get up. They evolve with these tall grass prairies. They've got to get up above all the tall grasses and get hit by the pollinators. Another favorite would be Hibiscus moschutos, which, let's see here. Yeah, right here. An absolute beast. And also very easy to grow from seed, adapted to wetlands. Like it's more of a riparian plant. It really likes wet soils, as you can see here. One of probably, I think there's like 300 or 400 species in the genus Hibiscus. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it's it's related to Jamaica. It's related to, there's desert hibiscus, there's temperate zone hibiscus, there's tropical hibiscus species, and this is our own Midwest and East Coast can see the range up here. Oh yeah, look at it. You get up there in Toronto. It's all over Toronto. You get Buffalo, New York, upstate. You got a couple in Vermont, couple in Ottawa, a couple of. So it's very widespread, basically anywhere. But yeah, mostly the eastern half. But it's really easy to grow from seed. So these will flower, and then you'll get this. The fruit is just a dry. It's just a dry capsule formed by the sepals. Well, there's the ovary in there, and then there's the five sepals, and you crack it open. It's the pericarp is dead at maturity, and all the seeds are inside. Crack it open, put it in a nice glass mug, heat up some hot water like 170, just before boiling in an electric kettle, pour it over there, give it a hot water treatment. This is getting the seeds to germinate. A lot of mallows do this. It's in the cotton family, in the chocolate family, Malvaceae, and let those seeds soak. Pour like 170-degree water and let them soak, and then sow them in wet soil, and they come up really easily. Really easy plant to grow from seed. And then another one that you guys are probably familiar with would be, well, let's see what would my let's see what with no boundary, how many other variations on the theme we got for the genus hibiscus. How many hibiscus species have I seen? Oh, only 8. Wow, I thought it would be I thought it would be more than that. Hibiscus coulteri is definitely a favorite. Denedatus, that's a desert one, etc. Hibiscus coulteri is wild because it grows with peyote, it grows with living rock cactus, it grows in really wild, unusual habitat that you wouldn't picture a hibiscus to be growing in. I mean, here's one. This is a cave that had a bunch of cave paintings in it. This is a really remote area in West Texas, and there's hibiscus coulteri. Same genus, but it's been adapted to a much different um, condition than hibiscus mosquitoes. So, and that's what I love seeing. That's why I travel to see this stuff. I love seeing the different variations on a theme that related species have taken after they diverged from a common ancestor, the result of millions of years, distribution to different habitats, etc. So, yeah, good stuff. And on that note, we'll move on to the genus Vernonia, the ironweeds, which are also in Asteraceae. You can see I got 10 species here. Does Gigantea go up? Go up to you guys. Let's see the range on Gigantea. Oh yeah, it goes up to Toronto. You can see those vivid pink flowers, like a hot pink, a very unique shade of pink. This is another great native plant, massive root system, gets upwards of 5 or 6 feet tall. Huge leaves, can get much bigger than that. Hopefully everybody's familiar with this one. And there's quite a few species of Vernonia. This subfamily, this whole subfamily of Asteraceae is really big in Brazil, where it forms sometimes woody. It forms like shrubs. It forms these really weird sclerophyll shrubs, some of which look like literally resemble spruces and pines. Absolutely nuts stuff. Let's go. I'll show you an example. Oh, you know what? How do you spell this? There we go. Lignafera. So this is a relative of the ironweeds, but this is what happens in a tropical dry deciduous habitat known as Campos rupestris in Minas Gerais, Brazil. You could see this thing looks otherworldly, but when you look at the flowers, which of course is how we know it's related to beautiful, incredible stuff here, incredible plants that haven't even been described yet. Unfortunately, I ran out of water on that hike. It was like a 14-mile excursion. It was yeah, got a little hairy at some point, you know. I had some people that might have been, well, they were fine. It was just a little sketchy for a second. But here, again, technically a close relative of the ironweeds. That thing, look at that. That's wild. That's insane. Look at the foliage. It's been there's almost no distance between the nodes. It's hairy and waxy because it's got this long 6 month long dry season. You can see the hairs in between those leaves right there. They're kind of semi-succulent, but again, there's that purple Vernonia flower. all right, which is again, the giveaway. It betrays a common ancestry with Vernonia. This is Lycnophora is the genus here. It's a very species-rich genus in Brazil. I know they told me to stick to Eastern North American plants, but I can't help but dabble and show you guys some of the bizarre stuff that is related to plants like ironweeds or hibiscus, etc. Yeah, there you go. See? Same flower structure. You got a forked style coming out of a five-lobed pink corolla, just like you get in the genus Vernonia and the ironweeds. But these things are from a much different habitat. They grow on extremely nutrient-poor sandstone with this alternating between 6 months of dry and 6 months of rain in the tropics due to the tilt of the earth and the intertropical convergence zone, etc. And so it creates some wild stuff. Okay, so let's go back to Vernonia gigantea, and I'll show you a closer relative of Vernonia gigantea, Vernonia larsenii, which is a Chihuahua desert variation on a theme, right? This is what happens when you take when you take an ironweed and you put it in a climate that is very, very dry, dominated by a limestone geology, um, and doesn't get much rain. The leaves shrink, they become much more narrow, the surface area is reduced, and the whole thing is covered in hair. Again, this is why I love exploring Earth's photosynthetic biodiversity. Some people are interested in, can you eat it? Is it medicinal? I don't care about that. I mean, I care about it a little bit, but this stuff is way more fascinating to me. How have these things evolved over deep time? I like things that make humans feel insignificant, myself feel insignificant. I think it's totally fascinating. That thing is related to the plant I just showed you, and you can literally see how it's been selected for by its environment. That thing is a product of where it's been evolving. And when you look at botany through this kind of lens, you realize how ridiculous it is. So many of our horticultural choices, the plants that we surround ourselves with, you go to like Home Depot or any of these Lowe's or any of these, depraved big box stores, a lot of the stuff they sell there is garbage. It lacks context. It doesn't support the life forms around it. It's disconnected from ecological reality. It doesn't nurture the land. It doesn't nurture the birds and the insects and the whole pyramid of life out there. It's absurd. It's pretending that you're somewhere you're not. How much time we got left? 6:40? What I got, like 10, 15 minutes? Let's do it. We got time for another one. All right, next time we'll move to Opuntia. I would have loved to really get these out in like a nice slide presentation, but unfortunately, I'm in between editing videos and writing 2 books, and I had to take my 4-year-old to get her measles shots today because these yahoos aren't getting their kids vaccinated, and so there's a measles outbreak here in West Texas or in South Texas. So anyway, we're gonna have to just settle for iNaturalist. So anyway, Opuntia cespitosa, sometimes confused with Opuntia humifusa, which is a cold tolerant prickly pear. This is one that was growing at the abandoned Floyd Bennett Airfield in Brooklyn. A cactus grows in Brooklyn. These things normally, and you get them in Canada too. You also get Opuntia fragilis in BC and Alberta. By far the most cold tolerant cactus, some of the most cold tolerant cactus species, and absolutely stunning when they're all lit up, when their baseball sized flowers are going off. Host plant for a number of insects. I look at insect pests differently the last few years when I've started understanding ecology, the last decade or so, really. If they're native insects, I normally let them ride. I've got leafcutter ants outside my place in South Texas right now, taking apart one of my erythrostemens. I'm not going to bother them. I enjoy having them around. And the tree can handle it. They've evolved together. Anyway, so Opuntia humifusa or cespitosa, both those species occur here. The differences are subtle. I don't really trip on what species it is too much. I don't care. Let the nerds fight over it on iNaturalist. I just get it down to genus, and I know they're both here. You can see cespitosa has needles, and humifusa has what are called glockids, which are just these little fiberglass hairs that feel really nice when they get stuck in your the pads of your fingers for 2 weeks and then end up forming a little zit. You get to pop it out, shoots out with a little bit of pus. It's pretty revolting, but absolutely wonderful plant. You can see they're taking over This was a landing strip. This concrete back here was a landing strip. How did it get colonized by plants? There's a lot of invasive stuff here because it is in New York City technically, but there's also a lot of cool natives. There's little blue stem in the background. How it starts is you've got these seams in between these concrete panels. Stuff gets established there. Again, plants growing and dying. Organic material builds up. You could see that's where the concrete first starts coming apart, is at these seams in between the concrete. It's pretty wonderful to see. It gives you an idea of what would happen if um, you know, uh, when places are abandoned, how the living world starts to reclaim it, right? In this case, half the species are invasive. They evolved 5,000 miles away, but they're still doing a job. I'd rather they were native plants there, but they're still doing a job and creating biomass and food for other things. Anyway, these opuntias, quite likely, I would assume, they grow on the dunes, they grow on sand. That's normally what they occupy. They occupy sandy sites in nature because that's where they can outcompete other plants. If they wouldn't be growing in a forest because they get shaded out, they get outcompeted. But because they have that succulent storage material, they can hold their own in sand really easily. Why is sand hard to grow in? Because it drains, it gets hot, it dries out really quick. But if you're a cactus, that's fine. You've already stored up a bunch of carbohydrates that you've manufactured via photosynthesis and water, and you just kind of sit tight and wait for the next rain. And so you can grow there, but a lot of other stuff that doesn't have some coping mechanism like C4 photosynthesis or CAM photosynthesis, in this case, crassulacean acid metabolism photosynthesis and succulent storage tissue. If it doesn't have that, it can't cope. So that's why they tend to occupy dune sites. They also apparently do really good at abandoned airstrips. And so this thing was thriving here. This cactus was all over the place. It was kind of cool. There were big patches of little blue stem grass, our native grass, and both Opuntia cespitosa and Humifusa. And again, it's really easy to just clip off a pad, preferably using a Leatherman or something, so you don't get those glochids in your hands and transport them home. And I advise people to do that. If you find a big patch of this stuff, bring a pad home. It's totally fine. You're not hurting the plant, you're helping it. You're gonna help establish a population somewhere else. Definitely one of my favorite plants. So how does it cope with those, in some cases, negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit winters? Well, there's two main ways that it goes about that. It increases the amount of solutes and sugars in its cells, so that there's not as much water in there, and it's got more dissolved material inside those cells, which lowers the freezing point of water, and also it produces betalain pigments, which are for the order Caryophyllales, which cacti are in, along with spinach and beets and a number of other cool plants. The betalain pigments help. They kind of work like a natural antifreeze, as well as protecting the tissue from sun, etc. So it increases they kind of shrivel up and they turn pink, and you'll see them looking like that in the cold, but they're doing fine. They're just sitting tight, and also they're normally covered with snow. I guess less so since climate change has made northern winters a little bit less cold, but they come through fine. And so this has been starting to be used in landscaping in places like Chicago, where there's a good native plant movement. It's been um, there's yeah, I mean becoming really common. It's pretty cool to see. I gave some to my mom. She still lives in Chicago. They're thriving there. And they grow like hell when they're getting full sun and water. And so they're really a fun plant to share with friends. Just, just warn them about the glochids. Okay, nice. See, there you go. See, you got these aerials and you got those glochids in there. These are not leaves, they're just flattened stems. And then this is, yeah, Sespitosa has needles, Humifusa just has glochids. So we got room for a couple more. I got two more plants I'd like to talk about. I can really talk, man. I could do this. You give me some coffee and just, whatever. I'll go ADD. People are leaving the room. I'm still talking. I don't care. I get a dopamine shot thinking about this stuff. Oh, back to the Vernonia. Oh yeah, this is a really rare. I just got to show you guys this. This is a really rare Vernonia from Arkansas that only grows on novaculite outcrops. Novaculite's a type of rock, and the places where you see it exposed in Arkansas are where the river has cut it out. Um, because that's only, I mean, it's so wet there. It's mostly very mesic forest, and so everything's covered with plants except where the river is scoured out these novaculite outcrops, and you get this very rare Vernonia. Oh, it's a nice blurry photo. Forgive me. But anyway, okay. So now moving on, let's go to. Did I get back? I think I got Bacchus in there. So Bacchus, you guys get Bacchus up in Toronto? Did the Canadians get the Bacchus species up there? I don't know. I hope so. Wonderful genus in Asteraceae. Let's check the distribution. My friend Paulie lives illegally on a houseboat in New York City. And I don't think you get Bacchus up in Canada. Oh, you get it in Nova Scotia. Anyway, okay. So my friend Paulie is lives illegally on a houseboat on a dirty little canal in Queens, New York, and still living illegally. He's just not paying rent. But I don't think they're supposed to be there. But it's fine. I not hurt anybody. And so we were out on this gradually sinking dinghy that he had. We had to literally stop and fill it up with a electric battery operated air pump every 30 minutes. And we were going up and down the canal on this wretched body of water, this fetid body of water, and it was mostly invasive stuff, Japanese knotweed, all kinds of different garbage we saw. And then we stopped on this one area it was so wonderful. It looked like it had almost been landscaped, but it hadn't. It was still filled with garbage, and no one in their right mind took the time to landscape. This is just a natural population of the East Coast version of coyote bush, Baccharis halimifolia. Baccharis pileolaris is the California native coyote bush. Baccharis is what's known as a pioneer species. It's a ruderal plant. It's one of the first plants to recolonize disturbed areas, places that have been cleared, places that humans have destroyed, abandoned sites, whatever. But it's a native. It's one of the native plants that's so good at doing that. And it would probably be invasive as hell on the other side of the ocean. I'm sure it is in some places. Hopefully, it hasn't been introduced there. You can normally tell what would be invasive on another continent by how well it does and how readily it shows up in the place where it's native. Solidago, goldenrod is extremely invasive in Europe. Here, it's one of our best native plants. It comes up readily, huge boon for pollinators. But it's also got things that keep it in check here in North America, and it doesn't have anything that really keeps it in check in Europe. So it's a bad invasive there. Anyway, I digress. Baccharis halimifolia, you could see growing here on this canal in Queens, New York, and it was absolutely covered in pollinators. Let's see if I got any photos of it. I don't think so. Fortunately, the pollinators are mostly European honeybees because it is New York City. Plants are dioecious, so they're a lot of most flowering plants, 80% will produce flowers that are bisexual. They have male and female parts in them. Baccharis is dioecious. One plant will only produce one sex of flowers. You could tell what's what by if they're fluffy or not. These fluffy things are the wind dispersal mechanisms for the seeds. The female plants produce the seeds. So this was a female plant, and there was a male um, down the way, but they're incredible. They're late fall bloomers, almost all of them. There's also a ton in South America, some really weird ones. That's where the epicenter of diversity is. A friend of mine, a Brazilian botanist, studies the genus. Um, there's I think there's like 550 species of Baccharis and new ones being described, but this is of the East Coast native one. And so it also tolerates salty air. It can tolerate road salt really well because it's evolved in these kind of estuaries, these brackish water estuaries, all the way up from Florida up to New York, etc. It's actually expanded its range, much like coyotes have, because of all the road salt that humans put on the highways in winter. And that gives it an adaptive benefit. A lot of plants can't tolerate that road salt that they use for melting the ice. Baccharis halimifolia can. And so it's had kind of a range expansion. But you could see back there, it's all lit up. I mean, this whole thing I was blown away to find this here. I was like, I didn't think I would find any native plants growing in New York City, but there it was. And it was doing great. And so hopefully that spreads. You know, mostly what you see is like one of the invasive Artemisia species. I forget the which species it is, but it's basically wormwood, and you would see, you know, some of the other I'm gonna plug this in. Some of the other invasive plants, most, you know, in New York, most of the invasive plants come from Europe. Let me see if I can get this. But yeah, this was a cool native. So lastly, which time we got left? Yeah, lastly, we'll do the lobelias. Let's do Lobelia cardinalis. You guys can probably get that up in Toronto, I would assume. Yeah, so this was in Chicago. This is Lobelia cardinalis, obviously going for hummingbird and lepidopteran pollination. Bees can't see in the color red, so this is kind of a way to exclude them from the pollinator buffet. But butterflies, and you can see there's a freight train in the background right there. This is kind of a little patch of prairie that was preserved on the south side of Chicago. Lobelias, of course, are all over the world. They've got really tiny seeds. There are some in Brazil that get 15, 20 feet tall, absolutely massive. There's some in Africa that look completely insane, just, you know, like these monolithic spires that 10 feet tall. Um, but of course, you know, our native ones are nice too. And so here's Lobelia cardinalis, probably one of my favorite native plants for this region. The seeds are really tiny. Again, I always rate, you know, how much do I love something is based on how easy it is to grow and reintroduce and, you know, spread an unauthorized plant and reintroduce back into public areas, etc. And lobelia, I mean, this whole plant will produce thousands of tiny seeds. The seeds are like almost dust-like, but it grows into uh, this very very beautiful and tall plant. They also produce a lot of toxic secondary metabolites. You know, their phytochemistry to deter herbivores. It's not going to hurt you unless you're eating, you know, mouthfuls of seed, but it certainly keeps a lot of things off of them, which is great. I don't think deer really mess with these things. So anyway, they're related to sunflowers. They're in the same order, and they also do secondary pollen presentation. Did I not give? I don't think I got close-ups of the flowers. Look at that. This whole grassland is just God. It was amazing. South side of Chicago, man, wild. Um, and so they do secondary pollen presentation. These little hook-like appendages you see popping out is the style and the pollen presenter. And like Asteraceae, they've got a fused anther column. So, you know, instead of having 5 anthers on filaments, 5 stamens, they've fused them together in a little column inward facing. And then this little pollen presenter, I call it, because it presents pollen. This little thing presents pollen on the first day and then later opens up. And it has like a little forked bifid mechanism and it becomes pistillate. It becomes basically female. So they produce pollen first, they're male, and then a couple days later, they become female and receptive to pollen, and then the ovary is down here. Got a superior ovary in this calyx, this green calyx, which is the conglomeration of sepals, and you get, you know, a few hundred seeds per fruit. Fruit's a dried dehiscent capsule. But of course, let's look at what the lobelias I've seen all over our. Let's see, yeah, let's see, because I think I've seen lobelia yeah, South Africa, Brazil, Chile, all throughout the U.S. I guess I saw one in Tasmania. I have no idea what the hell that was. So this is a big genus, man. And here is that Brazilian one. They've all got the same flower structure. This is a very old lineage, probably 50 million years old, if not more. This is forget what species this was, but this was from Brazil. This thing was 15 feet tall. I had to like bend it down to get photos of those flowers, but they've still got that pollen presenter, fused anther tube, and a little pollen presenter that comes out, pushes pollen out of it, does secondary pollen presentation. And then once the pollen's removed by pollinators, in this case, hummingbirds, then it opens up and becomes a little fork mechanism. So I think we should be running out of time here soon. Oh, this was in New Zealand, huh? Yeah, angulata. Um, but you could see lots of, oh, this is one of my most favorites. This is Dominican Republic in the cloud forest of the Dominican Republic. Hummingbird cracked this thing. It was a vining scandent lobelia. There's endangered magnolias back here. It was just everything was wet. There was an epiphytic pinguicula, uh, epiphytic carnivorous plant in this habitat. Just really stunning habitat. Some really wonderful birds too. Good medicine. So, oh yeah, Lobelia poly. We'll end it with this one, Lobelia polyphylla from. There's the habitat that Lobelia polyphylla grows, and this is Lobelia polyphylla. You can see it's like a woody. It's flowering. The leaves aren't out yet. It's deciduous. It's grown with Eulychnia cacti. This is in Chile. There was a little fox that kept begging us for food there. The tourists feed them. So, but same thing. Fused anther tube. The anthers are in there, inward facing, releasing pollen, and then that when that pollen presenter comes out, it pushes pollen out and then later becomes receptive. And these are probably offering a ton of nectar at the base of that tube for hummingbirds because South America is awash in hummingbirds. Oh, that's a terrible photo there. Nice habitat photo. So anyway, okay. So if anybody wants to ask questions,
Great.
um,
Yeah, thank you so much, Joey. We really appreciate you showing us, walking us through all of the genuses that are your favorite plants. And we're actually going to kick off our question period with a question from my co-host, Fatima. And I just want to remind the audience that if you do have a question, please use your Zoom controls to raise your hand, and then Fatima will call on you. Hopefully, we're going to try our best to do it in the order that our hands are raised. Thank you.
Okay. My question's something that I think most people would be interested in. It's pretty generic, but it's personal. A lot of people feel paralyzed when they first learn about habitat destruction and invasive species. Like, what's the point? Everything's screwed. But your videos push back against that kind of hopelessness. You call out systemic causes of ecological collapse while making people actually give a damn. How do you personally stay motivated when the scale of habitat loss and climate destruction feels overwhelming? Do you ever hit a wall with it? And if so, how do you keep going?
well, first off, I think humor is essential because tragedy and comedy are like this, and it is tragic. There's tragedy everywhere, but you know, humans are a crazy species. I'd like to think we're slowly becoming more enlightened. There's certainly been reason to, despair against that lately. But I think, an understanding of geologic time, when I understood the geologic time scale, that really put things in perspective for me. Um, this is not a sustainable, it's not sustainable. We know it's not sustainable. We know it's not going to continue on like this. It can't. Um, and I guess that gives me hope. I'd like to think, we're either going to learn and come correct, or it's gonna be just a gradually protracted decline and whatever, it get increasingly miserable. But which is, I know that sounds negative. It is, but plants are the answer to that, and there's no reason to despair. Listen, man, it's always been hard being human. It was a lot harder 100, 200 years ago. I mean, we don't have polio anymore. I'm excited for that. We've got a different set of problems. It's on a much more grandiose scale, but I don't despair. I don't care. It's like you just keep going. You just keep going. And I get really cynical and bitter and nihilistic. Um, but plants are always the answer. They're my answer to all of that. They teach me to be a better person, to not be such a dick, to be more humble. So, instead of sitting online and whining and bitching or talking down to people or yelling at people who disagree with you, or just turn all that off, man, and just focus on this stuff. This is the answer. It's not just the escape, it's the answer too. It's really easy, especially with these stupid things, to just be convinced everything's terrible, everything's, yeah, man, really? I mean, I wouldn't have been wanted to be alive 500 years ago. Someone like me probably would have been thrown in jail or yeah, I got a mouth on me. I don't know if anyone's noticed. Probably would have been, thrown in a prison or decapitated or something, by some obscene ruler, depending on what society it was born into. So, I mean, yeah, there's, if you look for reasons to despair, you're going to find them. If you look for reasons to just obsessively focus on the living world, you're going to find those too. So pick what you want, but also you gotta loosen up. You gotta find some good humor and comedy, maybe a little dark, and you gotta understand the geologic time scale. I mean, that day 66 million years ago was a really bad day too. And I'm glad. I know it's no comparison, but I think that things will get better at some point. We may not be around to see it, but either way, like the living world again it's always the answer. Grow plants, plant them out. Habitat loss, good. Grow 1,000 of something, whether it's at a garden allotment you volunteer at or in your apartment or whatever, and then just start planting them out. I mean, I really think the unauthorized planting thing helped a lot. And then just convincing people native plants are the way. And, plants make people happy, man. Think of all that lawn out there, median strips, sides of freeways, whatever. Like you find the right person to talk to, you can convince them, like, let me put some native plants in, let's try it. I'll come maintain it, whatever. Um, yeah, this stuff, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. That might sound trite to some people, but I think this stuff really is the answer to a lot of it. So keeping
No,
everything in
thank you,
perspective.
Joey.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Like put things into perspective. I'm gonna do the hands in the order that I saw them come up first. I think Sam, SAM with two M's said it first. You can ask your question. I did request for you to unmute.
Hi, thanks for that awesome chat. You're very inspiring and I love your sense of humor. You're totally right about all that stuff. And I guess as somebody who wants to start more officially dabbling into botany, it's I mean not really dabbling, trying to figure out when I can start to call myself that. It's really important to find mentors and people that you can look to and that you see a bit of yourself in. So I kind of would love to know who inspires you. Maybe like alternative kind of plant people or alternative botanists or anybody who really speaks to you and kind of has helped you on your journey to where you are right now. I'd love to kind of know that. Thanks.
I mean, I don't know. It would be, people like my friend Martin Grantham. I mean, he's like one of my favorite people. I just met him one day, like 15 years ago. I used to volunteer at San Francisco Botanic Garden, and I bumped into him, and he would just drop these like, exquisite explanations of things like it was nothing into casual conversation. Like we were talking about like sudden oak death, and he's like, oh yeah, some people say it's a fungus, but it's actually a brown algae that became parasitic. And I was like, wait, what the fuck? And I looked it up, and I was like, hey, he was right. And he's also got this really like, just a really good outlook. He's not a stiff. He's like schooled in academia, but he also knows it's kind of BS. Elements of it are all the ego and the money and the blah blah. Yeah, I mean, he was definitely one of them. My friend Pete, basically, I feel like they're like all old gay men, honestly. Uh, like old, like sweet, but like also a little bit of salty. Uh, yeah, gay men. I don't know. I mean, there's people over there. I've got friends that in academia that are really great to talk to too. I mean, I was just so into it that I would go talking to people all the time. I mean, most of them I don't want anything to do with people, or I used to not want to. I used to be a lot more antisocial. I was always pissed off, and but when it came to this subject, everything would change, and I would just ask questions. And don't be afraid. If you're not asking questions, you're not going to learn anything. You need to actually be thinking about stuff. People are like, "What book should I read?" And it's like, you can't just read a book. You need to go out, like get stabbed with an agave spine, almost fall off a cliff, get covered in ticks. You need to go out and like see this stuff and find it. And then when you're out there, be thinking about it and ask questions. Why does it grow like that? Why does it do this? What the hell's going on with this flower? Why does this flower have this weird flower structure like the lobelias, And and then just ask. I mean, some of the we talk about how terrible AI is, and it's going to be used for terrible things, I'm sure. But there's also, I mean, you can ask like DeepSeek. Like my friend Alan Rockefeller got me to download DeepSeek app, and I've been like asking it questions, and it will scour research papers, saving me like an hour and a half if I'm looking for like what pollinates Cyclanthus. Oh, beetles, cool. Wow, this weird neotropical genus of monocots that are related to screw. Like there's stuff like that. I mean, we have so many tools to access information now, you know, especially with the AI stuff. I mean, you can ask it, you have to parse, you have to check every time because it'll tell you nonsense sometimes. It's just a machine, but check the sources. But it's just about asking questions. For mentors, I don't know, man, find the people that are into this stuff, that are into native plants, go out, talk to people at native plant nurseries, talk to people at native plant societies, whoever, just ask anybody who's humble and cool and like, you can tell they're like on the spectrum level obsessed about this stuff. They'll find those people, but also, yeah, I mean, I remember I used to write down like lists of questions I had, like that I would think about my day to day, like how does a plant come to only grow on a certain type of rock? That's so weird. And I would write it down and then think deeper about it. Like, does it need the rock or is it, and I would write these questions down and then look them up or ask someone later. So I think it's really just, you don't, school teaches us to learn by memorizing things. Don't do that. Don't do that. Just, you'll memorize it naturally when you're obsessed about it. Think about the questions. Like, think about why is it doing this? Why is this doing that? What makes this? How closely related is this to this? How does a plant come to look like, a piece of rock? Like, what is that tissue made of? Oh, it's cuticle. It's got a really thick cuticle. What is a cuticle? Okay, now you just write the question. I could listen. I'm a windbag. I could keep going for another 15 minutes. I'll cut it short. You get the point. But just ask the right questions. Just think about it. Yeah.
Really insightful. It's Jay Bell was second to put their hand up.
Okay, so my question was basically regarding near where I live, there are lots of, abandoned lots and things like that that aren't necessarily being maintained that seem like they'd be good candidates for seed bombing. And I was wondering if you have any experience with that and any, tips you might have to make that more successful.
Never like just throwing seeds. It's always strategic. I like to plant along fence lines. People can't mow fence lines. If that owner gets a wild hair up his ass and decides to come mow that vacant lot, he's not gonna be able to get the stuff on the fence lines. I was just planting agaves with no permission throughout my neighborhood. It's 85 degrees here right now, so you can do that. And I was always plant on fence lines because they can't get rid of it. Like you got to think, like just think about who's seeds like to germinate on barren ground. So find barren ground, find areas where maybe if you're going to put some seeds in the ground, like brush all the debris aside and um, dig it out like a centimeter or something, put some seeds in there. It's definitely worth doing. Human assisted seed dispersal is a real thing, right? In the fall, when these plants are producing seeds, everything's starting to croak and just go out and start collecting seeds. What are you going to do with them? You live in an apartment? Who cares? Go out and start collecting seeds. Give them to someone. You never know. Maybe 2 months you'll meet someone who's like, "Oh, I'm looking for native plant seeds. Yeah, yeah, here I collected these last fall. Take these." Or if you're doing spring cleaning 6 months after collecting these things in the fall, and you're like, I'm not going to grow these. I just go throw them, yeah, along a fence line, dig it out with a stick a little bit, like scrape it, not dig it out, but scrape it away, throw them in there. I mean, you guys are in an area where you get ample rainfall, man. Sometimes where I am, it doesn't rain for 3 months. So you'll throw seeds, they won't come up forever. Um, but definitely just start collecting. Just start collecting, seeds and stuff. But always try to be strategic about it. I mean, you can just throw them and seed bomb, but I definitely recommend fence lines, places they're not going to be able to get mowed, mowers aren't going to be able to go, places where I always think about lighting, like what is the sunlight like? Like, is it, especially if you're rainfall, you want full sun. Um, yeah, that kind of thing. So, and then, every place has plants that like the ruderal plants, the pioneer species, right? The things that come up really easily, like goldenrod, that grow like hell, that, sometimes native plant gardeners don't even want around because they're so aggressive, right? But they're native, but they're so aggressive. Find those and you could dig up the roots if it's the dormant season, like now until March, if they're there, find the tubers, where the old stem maybe comes up, dig up the roots gently with like always use the long shovels, not the spade shaped ones. They're way easier. Dig up the roots to transplant them somewhere, just bare root. I mean, worth doing too. I mean, there's so much you can do. I mean, seriously, like if everybody was doing guerrilla gardening with native plants or unauthorized planting, man, think like some of those are gonna last. Some might get mowed down, some might die. You might get some cranky home, neighbor who doesn't like it, whatever. But some of those are gonna last. Like slowly, you could start to reclaim land, for native plants. You get when you more plants you get, the more life you get, the more birds, insects, cool lizards, frogs, whatever. So, yeah, but I always do fence lines, and dig it out a little bit places where there's not a thick layer of debris, where you can get barren a little bit closer to the actual soil, always better. So,
All right, Donna Marie.
Hi. Yeah, I had a question about goldenrod too. And it was about in a garden. Is it wise to remove goldenrod? Because like you just said, it tends to, compete the other stuff, and the other stuff that you're trying to grow probably won't have a good chance. That's one question I had. And the other question I had was if you're growing things from seeds and you have native seeds like American bellflower, but you also have the non-native creeping bellflower around, are those two things going to cross? Those are my
uh,
questions.
it depends. First off, could they cross? It depends how closely related they are. Sometimes maybe, but um, I'm not sure. I'm not sure with that creeping one. If is it native to North America or is it a European species or what?
I think it's European. I think
Yeah,
it's,
I'm not
yeah.
sure. Yeah, they could cross. Some things won't, some things will, but it's hard to say. I mean, it comes down to like chromosome levels and that kind of thing. But so I don't know, but I mean, I always generally try to stick with what's native unless I've got a couple non-natives, but they're not invasive, and I just grow like I've got like a sausage tree, which is like this African bignoniaceae thing that gets really cool bird pollinated flowers, but it's I'm not attached to it. I mostly like in my garden, I just stick with what's native because that's what's going to be easiest to grow. It's already spent thousands, hundreds of thousands of years evolving here, and it's already adapted to all the insects that live here and all the fungi and the conditions, etc. So I just grow. It's just a pragmatic thing for me. That's what it became. It's not even like a purity test. Um, and what was goldenrod? Yes, and for goldenrod, I mean, remove it if it's interfering and overtaking. Yeah, but I would wait to that point, or it's just a matter of personal choice. If it's interfering and outcompeting other stuff, remove it. But I mean, and it's just
Right.
personal taste too. But I mean, I love it. I mean, it takes it. You see prairies where it's one of the dominant plant species, but there's a ton of stuff. There's like a gall midge that uses it. There's a ton of stuff that uses it because anytime there's an abundance of a species in quote nature, it's just the real world. I hate the word nature. It's just the real world. But anytime there's an abundance of something in nature, something will evolve to use it or to exploit it. That'll happen with invasive species at some point, maybe not till for 500,000 years. Who knows? At which point the invasives have already smothered, and caused two or three species to go extinct, native ones. Who knows? But that'll eventually happen with the invasives. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just personal choice. If they're butting up against, something else you got in there that you like, dig them up, remove them, go plant them somewhere else, like on the parkway of a street or something,
Right.
go plant them somewhere. Definitely
Right.
don't waste them, you know,
Yeah.
put them
Yeah.
somewhere. So,
Good.
but that's the other thing too. If you're going to do that, if it's the growing season, you're going to dig up goldenrod and anytime you mess with the roots, you got to cut some of the shoots off, right? Unless you can really get a big soil bulb. But in most cases, for most plants, especially prairie plants, it's hard. If you're gonna destroy some of the roots and you want that thing to survive, chop off some of the shoots because there's a root to shoot ratio, right? If you've just traumatized the roots, but that thing is still transpiring moisture through the leaves, that's going to stress the plant out. It's going to wilt. It's not going to do well. But if you cut it, you can even cut it down to just the green stems, like 4 inches of green stem. Now you've got this big root mass, but not much shoot to supply with water. And so that's going to recover a lot quicker. So
Okay.
that's always something. Anytime you do move a plant and it's in the growing season, it's actively growing and you damage some of the roots, cut it back. Cut it back. It'll stand up. It seems counterintuitive, but it'll recover a lot faster.
Good.
Okay, Linda, I saw your hand up like early on. I'll ask you to unmute. Linda? Okay.
Maybe we should do bong rips or
I don't
something.
know,
I don't
maybe.
know. What's everybody
Maybe.
doing? I know it's cold and dark in those Canadian winters. Who's hitting the tubes? Who's pulling tubes back there? I don't smoke pot. I'm just saying, if someone was, I would
I'm
would
here. I'm
understand.
here.
Oh.
It's just all
Oh,
these
there she goes.
all these little things. Okay. Hi. Joey, I've been listening to you for ages. I'm so glad you're here talking to a bunch of Northeasterners. Um, just like you, I love plants that have a real problem in the world that you want to ask, why the hell do you grow here? Don't you know about down the road, there's like a beautiful place with lots of water. I spend time in bogs and fens with lots of
Oh,
water.
nice.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a little buggy sometimes. I but my question is nothing about that. I'm concerned about all the things you are, but I see this thing happening. It's called the horticulture industry.
Uh-huh.
And there's like, is there anything we can do to um, fix it or change it? Or because um, I still see the same old things being bought. I talk to everybody in the neighborhood. People know, but they still buy these sad plants that do nothing for anyone. And it's an industrial, like, another thing is with the tariffs, a lot of our plants that are in garden centers come from the States. And they bring invasives and things that we don't really
Oh
want.
yeah, it's all garbage. I mean, the
Yeah.
American horticultural industry is mostly trash. Yeah,
So
it's all stuff from
we
Europe and Asia if you're in the temperate latitudes. Yeah.
we just burn it all down.
I think just, I mean, that's the thing. Like that stuff sells because there's a demand for it. There's a demand for it because people don't know about native plants and because people have been so severed from the land, um, and from the rest of life on Earth. We live in this human bubble that, we think is the be all end all of reality, completely ignorant of the rest of it. So the way that you change it is letting people know that stuff is out there by just you can't get it what you want at Home Depot. Grow natives, kill your lawn, put it out there. Don't kill the backyard, kill the front yard so people see it. Start beef with your HOA or whatever, grow native. I mean, seriously, by the more you popularize this stuff, the more you put it out there in the culture, the more awareness there will be. I mean, in Chicago now, there's like large nurseries selling natives. They're still only selling a few, but I mean that's unheard of. Like when I was growing up, that would have been unreal. There's no way you would have ever seen that. So I think it just takes a cultural change, and that's the hard thing, right? It's like you can't laws won't do it because people will still want the garbage. You have to change the culture. How do you change culture? Well, by doing stuff like this, by just putting it out there, being loud about it, being polite, but being loud about it, and just demanding natives and just having fun doing it. Don't shame people, but definitely talk up natives, hype up natives, talk about these things are pragmatic. They evolved here. They have already been through the selection pressures of our cold winters and hot, humid summers and whatever. They've already been through the selection pressures of the fungi that attack plants in this ecosystem and the insects that attack plants in this ecosystem and the insects and birds that pollinate plants in this ecosystem, etc. Like, why are we growing stuff from 5,000 miles away? We're just growing things based on this, corny, Victorian European idea of beauty, which is what I grew up with. I mean, I didn't have any context for natives or which is just ecology. When I was growing up, it was always everything. I mean, the city of Chicago still plants like tulips everywhere. It's what? Like, what is this? It's looks like video game landscaping. All those blotches of color, and they're all in uniform lines, evenly spaced. It's like nobody wants that. But stuff changes, you know. It's really just about being vocal and just having a good time doing it, not lecturing and shaming people and talking down to them, but just being like, "No, man, this rules. This is great. You know, this is what we do." So, but again, horticulture industry is kind of like a, you know, bottom of the brainstem right now, like lowest common denominator. So it might be a while before that changes, but surely there's got to be some native nurseries up there.
Thank you
So
for your
hopefully
question, Linda. Laura, this is like I asked you to unmute.
Hi, Joey. Thank you for joining us. The most exciting thing I heard you say is that you're writing 2 books. Can you talk a little bit more to that and tell us what they're about and when we can enjoy reading them?
yeah, one book is just going to be called Crime Pays, Botany Doesn't. And it's just a selection of photos from all over the world with write-ups on the plants that grow there. Um, and that's going to be through Abrams Press. It's been kind of a nightmare to just like, you know, I turned in this thing in May and I didn't hear back from them. It was just working with the publisher. Um, has been kind of a pain in the ass. But then the next book is about invasive species, horticultural atrocities, how society views plant life, kind of more of what I've been talking about during this presentation. And that is actually due next week. So that's what I'm kind of been working on and losing my mind about lately. And I'm pretty excited for it. I tend to just vomit words onto a page and then sort it out later. So we'll see how it comes out if the editors can clean it up. But yeah, that's those are the books I'm working on. And like the Crime Pays of Botany Doesn't books, I mean, I've got enough photos. I could do like 6 of those based on plants from all over the world. So it'll be a fun picture book, 288 pages, and I've got to do the design myself. I just taught myself InDesign because their designer makes it look like a health company, a health insurance company brochure. And I don't want the book to look like that. So it's, you know, anyway, but yeah, so but that should be out, I don't know, 2026 or something. Yeah. Okay,
Excited
who's
for
next?
that.
Everybody's pulling tubes. Does anybody say pulling tubes? When's that thing we heard somebody say pulling tubes, doing a bong rip? I haven't done a bong rip in years. I would do them with you guys though. You know, you gentle Canadians. Who's pulling tubes in Canada? Okay, sorry, go on. Go on. I'm sorry, I apologize.
I feel like weed was legalized here a lot earlier than the United States. I feel
Yeah,
like
it is
we're
legal up there,
ahead.
right?
We're ahead on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, well,
Um,
anyway, I don't even
um,
smoke. I just like growing it as a plant. You know, you grow a bunch and just give it away to people. That's what I did when I lived in California. But now I'm in Texas where they're nuts. It's like the last holdout. I think it's going to make everybody liberal. Okay, go on. Sorry.
no, it's okay. Linda, I saw your hand up, and then Soda Pop Lip Trot. Linda, are you there?
Is that Linda
Everybody's
the same
pulling
that
tubes.
Yeah.
just asked the question about the book, or is that
Oh,
a
was
different?
it? Oh, was it? Oh,
think
my
so.
bad. Okay, then
Yeah.
Soda Pop Lip Trot. Go ahead.
Hey, hey Joey. I love listening to you talk about biogeography and plant life histories and glaciation and all this kind of stuff in your videos. And I was just wondering what you think about like the importance of, or if you think that it's important to introduce like regional introductions or reintroductions of plant species. A lot of the plant communities up here. They're facing like a lot of pressure from climate change and like invasive forest pests like emerald ash borer, hemlock woolly adelgid, and other pressures like development and just lack of native habitat. So we have like a lot of species here, at least in southern Ontario, that are on the northern end of their range, and like sometimes to move them around, I don't know, you don't want to displace what's native or like, you know, degrade like a native plant community, but do you think there's, you know, room to continue to kind of help some of these rare species that don't have a lot of ability to spread because of how little habitat is left? Should we be kind of organizing to increase the diversity of some of our forests and stuff to increase their resilience with stuff that's co-evolved here, like
You
spreading say, the range of cucumber magnolia a little further north.
you're talking about just growing them from seed and planting them in
Yeah,
places, or
yeah. And just kind of a little bit outside of the kind of range map that's
you're
currently.
talking about like planting in wild
Yeah, no,
habitats, or
or doing restoration, I guess, just with stuff that's not, you know, presently
well,
here, maybe
well,
was.
in wild habitats, I kind of hesitate because it can. I don't think it's that bad. Again, people will say, oh, this is invasive here. Like someone was calling Solidago sempervirens invasive in Chicago. I was like, wait, how can it really be invasive if it's from 500 miles away? That doesn't make sense. Like in the long span of time, the distributions shift. How distributions have shifted, that's not really the worst. Invasives tend to come from either like the far other side of a continent, like across a mountain range, like someplace that never would have been introduced to without humans, or especially from another continent, an ecosystem that's been separated for 50 million years from, for the most part, from North America, well, actually less than that, I guess, because when the climate was warmer, stuff was going up to the higher latitudes and moving around. But anyway, um, but with wild habitats, I always hesitate, and it's a case by case thing, and you don't want to be moving. If you're talking about like actually moving plants, I wouldn't do that. You're talking about just like seeding or planting things out. That's a little different. You're not going to be transporting disease. Like there was an issue with Torreya taxifolia in Florida, um, where it's suffering from some introduced fungus. All the worst tree diseases are of course invasive. They're from other continents, which really speaks down to people that deny invasion biology. It kind of defeats their argument right there. That fact does, um, but with Torreya taxifolia, they were gonna like people wanted to move it north to Georgia, and it turned out that they were actually moving parts of this tree disease too. So there's things to take into account there. I don't think it's wrong to plant things. I mean, humans have so thoroughly dominated and taken over the planet that like we're either going to be stewards or just reckless, unthinking destroyers. We have to we're gonna but either way we're going to be affecting it. So we need to think about how we're going to be doing that. Um, I mean, that's if that was going to be done, I would recommend it's like a research study is done with a test plot somewhere. But as far as like planting and just native plant gardens and stuff, yeah, go. I mean, why not? Of course, I think that's great. Planting in like public parks in a city, plant like bold cypress gets planted throughout the Chicago area. It's not native there. It's native to Southern Illinois, but that's the northern end of its range. But I definitely think that's a reality because the higher latitudes are going to warm with climate change much more than the equator is, right? It's like it's a gradient. It's like that's why we get these polar vortexes. If that cold air on that polar vortex, like it just froze here last month. If that cold air comes down this far south, that means we're at the trough of the jet stream wave, and the crest is way up there. That means way up at higher latitudes, there's a corresponding abnormally warm area, So it's a reality and stuff. I mean, that would be happening anyway, right? Like as the climate has changed back and forth over time, I mean, there used to be alligators and palms growing in Wyoming in the Eocene, right? But now, of course, it's happening so fast. The change is happening so fast. So I definitely think there's a reality there that humans, since the change is happening so fast, humans would maybe do well to help introduce some of the stuff then from lower latitudes rather than just letting it happen on its own. But I think it's got to be done, conducted in a scientifically reasonable manner and measured and studied, and you don't want to be introducing insects or diseases or other pathogens, etc. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Louis M.
Hello. Is it coming through?
Oh,
Yeah, we
yeah.
can hear you.
Okay, great. Hey, I want to start by saying thank you for the effort you put in communicating all this knowledge in a way that even my artist brain can take in. I never thought I'd be able to approach something like plant phylogeny, but damn, here we are.
Yeah, it's
So,
easy.
uh, so speaking on the northern reach of Apuntia, my question is, have you spent much time in the Indiana dune habitat?
No, I was there. I got a friend's parents live there, and I've been there before. I've seen that cactus species there. I've seen a lupin there. Yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff. Because, and again, on sand, sand is like a more arid microsite in the Mesic East. So, and these arid microsites, you're going to get plants that don't grow in the deeper soils or the wetter soils, like that's what glades are, right? In Tennessee and Georgia and wherever, these limestone glades or granite outcroppings, whatever. Sand is the same thing. So, like you can find like lupinus is a genus that I mostly know from out west. There's a ton of diversity. There's a ton of diversity once you get like west of Central Texas in the genus lupin, but I forget what species it was, lupinus growing in yeah, right there, like just across the state line from Chicago. It was wild. There's a ton of good stuff there. Um, yeah, I just it's like any place. I wish more people appreciated the natives and were growing them in their yards. So yeah, was there something about Indiana Dunes that you were that the guy you jazzed or what?
Oh yeah, actually, I've been spending a lot of time in the freshwater dunes around Toronto, especially on Toronto
Uh,
Island. Uh, and oh, it's crazy. I've never experienced like a landscape like this, and it being right outside of the city of Toronto, like a ferry ride away, blew my mind. Uh, and
yeah, oh
all
yeah,
I could find on freshwater dune habitat was Indiana.
yeah. There's some. I think there's some in Ohio. I know there was a cool plant called the Lakeside Daisy. It was Tetranuris. It was in Ohio. It was some rare plant. I forget what species it was. I saw it in Illinois. It's on my iNaturalist, but it's a similar thing. Like Tetranuris is a genus that generally likes drier sites, but um, I think in that case it's growing on more of like a glade habitat in Ohio. Um, but yeah, I mean it's you see a drastic changeover. I mean here in South Texas, we've got the South Texas sand sheet, which is sands that were basically windblown from the beaches of the Gulf, like an hour to the east. And once you get to the sand habitat, it's a totally different, change up in plant species. And you get all these plants that have lots of hair on them because hair is really adaptive. If you're growing in a dry climate, it reflects sun, it prevents moisture from being evaporated from leaves as easily. There's also a frost benefit. It's insulates against frost. Like I was just in Ecuador at 12,000 feet and saw all these hairy plants, but it's not a dry climate. I was like, what's going on? Oh, this is all insulation against coldness. Wow. So, but down here in the sand habitat here, it's wild. I mean, it's deep sand and there's a Helianthus argyrophyllus. It's the woolly sunflower. It's like a sunflower that gets 15 feet tall and is completely covered in wool. It's nuts. It looks like a whitish blue, like an icy blue color to the leaves. So yeah, I would imagine, especially up there, wherever that is in the Toronto area, you're seeing sand habitat, totally different plant community than you would see on like a deeper soil. Yeah, you should definitely be logging all that on iNaturalist. Like you can build a nice species list of what grows there. So yeah,
Oh yeah, I'm
Tetranuris
all
herbaceae.
over.
Yeah,
I'm
cool.
all over INAT. There's Salix cordata, which is a dune willow that's hairy as hell and only grows around the Great Lakes, and that's
Oh wow,
blowing
cool. I've
me.
never heard of that one. I'll check that one out. Yeah. Yeah, lots of hairy plants on the sand, man.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask Joey, I know we are a little bit over time. Do you want to talk about your projects or take another question?
Yeah, I could take questions. Yeah, I got time.
Okay. Joshua Babcock.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Wow. Something's actually working for once. I have a question and then I have like a small pre-question. Pre-question being, every once in a while you introduce yourself as Tony. What's that about?
Oh, Tony, it's like an alter ego. Tony
Oh, is it?
Santoro. He's like the 50-year-old like Marcel Duchamp had Rose La Vida. Tony Santoro is like, yeah, he's like the the exasperated, somewhat turned up, angry, mid-50s geriatric Italian. He comes out sometimes. He's like a more salty character. He's not a, he's the spines to the soft succulent center. Yeah, I don't know. I just, Tony, whatever. They're both my name technically, so
Is it your middle name or something?
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Real question is, I have a couple of plants in the backyard that are they seem to have like extra floral nectaries, like Chamaecrista fasciculata and
Yes.
Senna hebecarpa, I think has it too.
Yeah.
Do
A
you
lot
have
of
any
legumes to
idea
it.
why that evolved that way?
Yeah, for ant to keep ants hanging out around the plants so that the caterpillars and stuff will get attacked by the ants defending their food source. The same thing you'll see ants doing with aphids. If they're farming aphids on a plant, you touch it, they'll come and, try and sting you or whatever. It's the same thing. They're defending their food source. So if a caterpillar comes and moth caterpillar or something starts chewing on that, or a leaf hopper or something, the ants will attack it. So there's a lot of that in the upper Amazon where I just was too. A lot of myrmecophytes, plants that create housing for ants in their tissues. Um, but extra floral nectaries are just another way to you're just paying ants to act like bouncers, basically. It's a cool thing to notice. A
It's
lot of
like
legumes do it.
yeah, it almost looks like a little ball of nectar on the petiole or something, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. It
is it a
looks
little
like
pore or something?
a little opening. Yeah, like it's got a little ring around it sometimes. Yeah, you can totally tell there's something there when they're, if it is present. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I have a couple other plants that are not from here that have it too, and they're also in Fabaceae. So, like
Yeah. A
I
lot of
think it's
legumes do it.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of
Pithosolobium, Brazilian
legumes.
rain tree has it too.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, you're growing that inside or something or what?
Yeah, and outside in the summer, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Peyote's legal up there too. You guys should be growing peyote. Everybody should be growing
My
a ton of peyote.
I am a little bit, but I suck at it.
You could email me for pointers if you want. Actually, I did a couple of videos on growing it with my friends or with the Native American church. Grow a bunch. So yeah, it's great. I wish it was legal to grow down here because that's one of the species we're trying to restore on our conservation property, or at least protect.
Yeah, you have to have
Pigs
some
are,
kind of you have to have a permit, right?
yeah, you've got to have tribal card. I mean, I've got friends that have tribal cards, are in Native American church, but I mean, I even then you're not allowed to plant it. Like you're only allowed to, you know, purchase or harvested buttons or to cut it yourself. So
Hmm,
yeah, the law is designed to drive the plant into extinction.
that's depressing.
Yeah. But
Active
anyway,
conservation in Canada. If anyone wants a link to where they can purchase peyote seeds, let me know. I'll add it to the chat.
really easy to grow. You could grow it in an apartment. You could grow 500 peyote seedlings on a tiny desk with LED lights. Just get Spider Farmer or Sunblaster lights. Nothing else is really bright enough.
I think Taylor Wilkes. Yeah.
Oh, hey, Joey, calling in here from Peterborough with the whole landscaper party.
Hello. Hello, everybody. Oh,
We
who's
got
the
a
little
question
guy?
here. We got a question here from Carlota.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Joey. So there's
How's
a
it
group
going?
of like 8 gals with us and a baby. We're just so excited to be together. We love you. We've been following you for a long time.
Oh,
We're in
nice.
Peterborough. Maybe you haven't heard of Peterborough, but we're in Canada. It's a
Where
great
is it?
city.
What state of Canada is it?
So the state, it's called a province of Ontario, but it's
Oh,
okay.
Ontario.
We're a
You know
little
what I mean.
different.
I've been,
You know what I mean. I
the
know, it's
US
all
has
good, it's all
polluted
good.
the US has polluted my mind. I
I
feel
know.
so good when I get out of here. I was just
I
in
know, but
Ecuador
just so
for
you
2
know,
weeks. It
there's
was
like
so
a group
nice.
of people that love you. If you come to Peterborough, we'll show you around. We have great gardens, different than California, but just, totally unique in their structure and their
Do they
principles.
freeze?
And so we want
I
to
want to
invite
go
you
see
to our
the
city.
Bruce Peninsula. I want to go see those
Yeah,
Massasaugas. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, we can go on hikes. We can do it all. But so our question to you, thank you first of all for coming all this way to our city.
So we know that the California forest fires, the baby that you hear in the back, one of my good friends just had a baby, so she's breastfeeding right now, but that's how it goes, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. I was
And
gonna ask who the little guy is in there. Yeah.
I know, he's so cute. His name is Harvey. So there's 6 women and a baby right here.
Nice.
See?
Nice.
I know.
How's it going, Harvey?
Harvey.
How's it going, Harvey?
The next plant saver of the world, you know?
Mhm.
And here's
Okay,
the
so
thing, like who do you know that gets together with friends to listen to a guy like you? This is what we do. This is how cool we are. But so my question is, you know, we were watching the forest fire destruction in California, and obviously our hearts broke for you, and it was
Yeah.
pretty major. And what did you notice after the fires were over with regards to the plants that really like came up and started to do their thing? Kind of like what happened in Chernobyl. It was the plants that really fixed the environment. What are you seeing in
Oh.
California for the same thing?
Well, I haven't lived in California in 3 or 4 years now. I live in Texas, but I've got friends who still live there,
Okay.
and I saw plenty of fires when I was there. Um, it's really hard to imagine what the climate, like what the days are like when those fires happen. It's so windy and it's so dry. Um, I mean, it basically, I mean, normally, it starts raining there in November in Southern California. It's been bone dry. They're in a drought, which is kind of one of the projections of climate change, at least for that area, is you're going to have boom and bust. I had this climatologist on my podcast 2 or 3 years ago, and he said that's what the models predict is you're going to have these long dry spurts and then these big wet spurts and whatever. But um, that environment there is evolved with fire. I mean, fires are going to happen there. If you're building there is like building in a floodplain and then being like amazed when you get a flood. Um, the certainly the fact that it's so dry and then those winds, I mean, the Santa Ana winds are insane. I don't know if you've ever experienced them before, but it's really, really intense wind that's coming almost, at a 40-degree angle. Like, it's not, it's insane. They're so strong. I've been in Santa Ana windstorms before. They're coming from Nevada, it's cold air descending. So it's wholly without the Santa Ana winds, you couldn't have had that fire as bad as it was. I mean, it basically, if it basically turns everything in. If you've got a fire going, it turns it into a blowtorch, basically. But also, yeah, normally it should have been started raining 2 months prior, and it didn't. And that was when I was still living in California. We were already getting big winter droughts like that. But the plants that come back, I mean, I don't know if they've got enough rain for a lot to come back. But again, like I said, any California botanist will tell you like half the plants out there have evolved with fire. There's cypress trees that need fire to open their cones. There's seeds, manzanita seeds that need smoke treatment to get them to germinate. Um, there's so many plants that resprout. I mean, it's a fire dependent landscape like any Mediterranean climate. The 5 Mediterranean climates, South Africa, uh, I don't know what happened. South Africa, Mediterranean region, Western Australia, California, and Chile. So almost all of them except for Chile are fire adapted. So you still there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we
I
can
don't
hear
know what
you.
happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
sorry, I had muted them, but they're there.
okay. Anyway, so yeah, so I don't know. I would be really curious to see what stuff comes back, but yeah, all it takes is a little bit of rain and like the oak trees. A lot of the oak trees there are stump sprouters. They've evolved to respond to fire like that. So I think that's what you'll see in a lot of that habitat because a lot of it is chaparral or oak woodland. So hopefully that answers the question.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for your questions. We're actually going to be doing a t-shirt giveaway next for anyone who's in attendance, and Ellie will be spinning a wheel. And if your name gets called, then you win the t-shirt. And in the meantime, Joey, if you want to have the floor to basically promote your projects, promote your books, anything that you want to talk about that's on your mind that's not specific to the questions, please take the floor. And for anyone who wants to ask him questions, you can go and harass him privately on his DMs. He'll be good. He'll answer the questions there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything to talk about. My mind is like filled with like 10 separate thoughts at any given moment. It would certainly be, yeah, I mean, if anybody wants to ask questions, that's certainly the easiest, give it some direction. But yeah, I will say, I mean, I'm excited about this conservation property that we just oh, look at this guy. Look at this. Who's this guy right there? We got we got 145 acres of thorn scrub habitat that we're protecting. We're trying to fence it and kill some feral pigs that have been destroying cactus populations out there, which is a bummer. I got that going on. I've got a couple trips planned. These books are driving me insane. And then I've got a ton of videos to edit from Chile and Ecuador still, and then other plants, other plans, probably in June. I normally go to Mexico, etc. So yeah, and then I'm probably going to be going back to Ecuador in November. So yeah, just traveling around and using iNaturalist and documenting what I see, and then trying to show it to other people and get them to do the same. The book that I've been writing, I'm really excited about. I mean, I hope it inspires people to just start trying to put native plants back into their environment where they live. People say they don't. No one's born understanding how plants work or how to grow them. You have to try and fail at it before you can figure it out. And then you look at why what you did succeeded or failed, and try to think about things like how water is moving through soil, or why a plant might sunburn, or why it might struggle, or whatever. So I really think it's just about getting people to try, to get out there and do it, to get off the phone, stop arguing with people online, stop trying to change the world by talking shit on the internet, pardon my French, and just go out there and focus on the living world, And if you have an apartment or something, try growing stuff in your apartment. I mean, hell, grow peyote in your. You guys could purchase peyote seeds, and grow them, and then if they get too big, send them to like one of the indigenous organizations down here. um and meanwhile you've gotten 4 or 5 years to hang out with them, and whatever, and grow them, and through their life cycle, whatever. Grow the natives, learn what's native, like find little crumbs of habitat, grow those native plants. If you're just growing, in your backyard in 1 gallon pots, that's fine. Get like a dump truck of wood mulch from an arborist, dump somewhere. Find some stuff to make your own biochar, which is like perlite, and just mix your own soil using biochar and wood mulch. I mean, there's whatever you can do, man. All this stuff. I mean, it all helps. And there's like I was saying, if everybody was doing this, like just guerrilla planting, sowing acorns at fence lines, um, I mean, some of those plants are going to make it. Some of those plants are going to be around in a decade or 2 decades, and it's something you can directly do to make where you live and make your immediate surroundings less shitty, pardon my French. You can to actually improve the quality of the life around you. So, and also just learning about this, that's a way to show respect for something. If you respect something, you learn about it. You study, you take the time to learn its name. Don't trip on species too much. Learn the genus name at least, right? Always ask what family a plant is in. If you learn a new plant, why do you do that? Because eventually you're going to start to see similarities between plants that are all in the same family. And that means if you find a plant, if you're on, say, vacation somewhere 600 miles away, and you meet a new plant, you're like, I wonder what this is. You could look at its flower, because flowers are how we group things in the family, and say, oh, wow, I know that's in Asteraceae, or that's a legume, or that's a brassica, brassicaceae, whatever. It really helps. It's just basic plant identification and taxonomy. So all that stuff, learning and growing, and learning plants, growing plants, whatever. So does anybody have any questions? Because otherwise it's going to be real, stream of consciousness. I'm going to be like Rain Man talking to himself at a bus stop. You're going to be like, what is this? How do we get this guy to shut up? You got to like, let's get the ether rag, chloroform his ass.
So we do have 3 more people with their hands up. Did you want to answer a few more questions, or would you like to, let us know? We just don't want to overtax you.
No, it's fine. Overtax me. It's fine. I have to get up and pee at some point, but this is fine for now.
Okay. So maybe we'll just take a few more minutes. Perhaps Ali, behind the scenes, maybe we could do the t-shirt giveaway and then announce the t-shirts in between the questions.
Sure. I will spin the wheel while people are asking their questions.
Thank you.
Okay, then I'll go to the next question. I think John F. Foster had their hand up this entire time and they didn't put it down.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Hi, Joey. I'm a member of the Canadian Chestnut Council here in Ontario, as well as being president of NANPS.
Nice.
At CCC, we've been taking the population here in Ontario and trying to reproduce the chestnuts. We're up to our F3 generation. The chestnut here in Ontario is slightly genetically different than the chestnuts in the United States. We call them the Northwestern chestnut here. And they're two genetic populations. And what we do, there was some talk about enhancing migration and stuff of the plant. We find a chestnut that's been isolated for several years because they require nearby chestnuts in order to bloom. So we take 10 or 12 of the smaller chestnuts, put around it so that we break isolation of the chestnut tree. And that helps a little bit in spreading the gene population here in, or the two gene populations here in southwestern Ontario to spread. So there is some merit to doing assisted migration. If you take plants that are within, say, 10 to 50 kilometers of the original location and plant them, if you plant them from 500 kilometers away, then you're going to contaminate the gene pool, as it were, in the local population, because a lot of the plants grown locally are adapted to the local microclimate and the soil conditions that you find.
Right. Yeah, I would say to that though, you know, these plants have been shifting around, their distributions have been shifting around for probably 9 or 10 million years, I think, which is when they maybe a little bit longer, when they last shared a common ancestor with Melisma, the Chinese one. And any alleles that are transferred to a new population, you know, if that quote would pollute the gene pool, would eventually get filtered out if they're not adaptive, if they're not beneficial. So it's not like you're going to be, and this is what I say about, you know, a lot of native plants. I mean, I think that with a lot of that stuff, like it just doesn't, like, you know, again, the selective force is the environment. If an allele, like if you plant like red maples, right? Because red maples, for instance, they grow in Florida and they also grow in Maine. But obviously, the Florida population is not going to be as well adapted. There might be some individuals in that population that can take really cold winters, but most probably can't because they haven't been through it as a selective force for thousands of years, right? So if you take some of those up to Maine, um, they're not, I mean, yeah, they'll maybe the pollen will produce seedlings that aren't cold adaptive, but some will be. But the ones that aren't cold adaptive will just get killed it's not like you're like polluting the gene pool or you're going to make the overall population less adapted to the conditions in that place because the environment is still there acting as a selecting force every winter, right? I mean, that's kind of the way this stuff works. It's you know, any alleles that might, it's still the same species. There might be alleles. I can totally see it, and I'm not saying people should do it, and I'm not downplaying the risks, or the, you know, the more maladaptive, the negative sides of mixing populations. I definitely like keeping ecotypes separate because that ecotype is unique and it was created in place. But I'm just saying it's not the end of the world. You're not going to call, you know what I mean? Because again, that environment, like with the case of red maple, you move it there and it's not adaptive, it's just not going to make it. You're not going to make, it's not like it's polluting the overall gene pool. Any alleles will still be being filtered out. You might be wasting your own time, but you know, it's it's not gonna, like, it's gonna harm the species. Um, as long as there's still a robust population being grown every year, you know, as long as there's enough material, genetic material for natural selection to act on. So, but I definitely believe in keeping ecotypes separate, you know. So that's why I was saying I don't think assisted migration stuff I'm not really for, and I certainly wouldn't do it willy-nilly. I would conduct tests first. So yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've noticed in some environments that migration is already taking place naturally. So that's interesting in and of itself too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to happen fast enough, as fast as the climate's going to change. Um, I mean, when I was in the Southwest, you see that a lot in the Southwest. You see, like, you'll be in a really hot, dry desert, and junipers at lower elevations are dying out, but the ones up top are still doing fine. So the same thing in Chile with the genus Copiapoa, the cactus genus, like the ones at lower elevations on some of the mountains that are next to the ocean, because they get all their moisture from fog. Some of the lower populations of a Copiapoa species will be dying out, but up top where they're still getting ample fog, they're still alive. So, um, yeah, it's not going to happen fast enough. I mean, it's we live in a mass extinction. This is a mass extinction that we're causing, and we've kind of been causing for thousands of years, but the scale is really ramped up the last century or two. So, but we can also change it. So, and mitigate the damage and also just be like, form a relationship with the living world around us rather than just, assuming it's all been put here for us, like a lot of modern society tells us that it has. So, yeah, right on. That's interesting work with the chestnuts, man. That's cool. It's cool stuff.
Okay, we're gonna do one more question, Shelby, and then Ellie, we have the t-shirt giveaway. This is the t-shirt, and it's repping the society. So that's what we're gonna be giving away. And the talk will be recorded, or it was recorded, and it will be posted if you want to go back to anything. Like I want to go back to my question after that one and look at, I don't know, hope that like Joey said earlier. So if you want to review anything, then the recording will be available. Shelby, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. Currently, Joey, I'm working on a lot of native plant seed stratification, and a lot of the inventory I have, the seeds are way older than 5 years old. Should I be focusing more on the native plant seeds, in your opinion, that are younger than 5 years old, or should I be balancing it out and trying to replant some that are older, or what would you recommend?
If wait, you're running you got a seed bank well, first off, a lot of seeds can, especially, I mean, some seeds can live a century, like Comptonia peregrina. I don't know if you guys get that up there. That's what is that, Miraceae? It's in the order Phagales. It's got nitrogen fixing bacteria in the roots. Really cool little shrub. God, that's one of my favorites, man. It smells amazing too. It looks like the California ironwood, the leaves do. Comptonia peregrina. But the seeds of those can last for a century in some cases. So give it a go, I mean, what might happen if seeds don't germinate in the first year sometimes is they'll go into extended dormancy, but they're still alive. Sometimes they croak, but I would definitely try to sow some of those. But just, get I don't know what conditions you're growing them in, but or what your growing setup is like. But like normally, like for me, I'll get like flower boxes, like long flower boxes, because the more volume of soil you have, the better things tend to do, in my opinion, unless you have to water. But I would give it a go. I would try it. Depends on the species, Um, some seeds are recalcitrant or they just don't last that long, and others can last a century. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hope that helps. Sorry.
Joey, we just want to thank you so much for this fabulous talk and for just going
Yeah.
above and beyond by answering all of those questions. We are so grateful to you, and we
It's
have
fun.
just so many big Joey Santore fans here in Canada.
Thanks. It was fun. Yeah, I always appreciate opportunity to run my mouth, and I'm amazed you guys were able to sit through it. But um, yeah, thanks. I had a fun time. So
Yeah, so Joey, we have to arrange you coming to Canada and coming to the Bruce Peninsula.
yeah, I'll get in.
And
The
Peterborough.
last time I was in Canada, they didn't give me any trouble, but sometimes I've heard they can make it hard, and I understand why. I would, that old analogy about like being in Canada, like it's like living in an apartment above a crack house or something for the U.S. It's the same thing. I totally understand, but hopefully they'll let me in, you know. But yeah, let's go look at Massasaugas on the Bruce Peninsula.
Yes. NAMS has a conservation property on the Bruce Peninsula, so there's some opportunities there. We'll talk.
That'd be great to see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.